What is going on, YouTube world? Insert Revolution podcast, number 106. Tonight, first and foremost, we thank our good friend Jeff Morris graciously taking his time joining us again. I wish they would have won last week. I wish they would have won. I saw it was like 21 to 3 or 21 to 10, and I'm like, good. Clemson's going down. Sweep them out. That's not Trevor Lawrence time anymore. It's not Hunter Renfrow time anymore. It's not Colin Farrell time anymore. Syracuse back to some prominence again. They didn't drop far in the rankings because they blew the lead, but I'm impressed. Again, they haven't been really relevant since Donovan F. McNabb. Maybe a couple spurts here and there afterwards, but happy to see them doing well. But anyway, Jeff joining us tonight, along with Steve and Vinny, and talk some hockey. So Steve will take forefront. He is the hockey oracle.
Shush your mouth. Not self-proclaimed. We have to go through this every time, Jeff. Somehow, shape, form, or fashion, I have been given the name the hockey oracle. Only because I know some stuff, but compared to the other two people and yourself, I'm abysmal. So just throwing out some context there for you.
Well, the first time I know you're in the Dallas area, the first time I went to a Stars game when I was working for Pinnacle, the guy beside me said, "You know what they should do is they should get 6 points for getting a goal, and then they have to shoot it over the net and they get another one." And that was how he thought. And then his wife said, "And they should give each team a puck." And Dallas has come a long way since the days that the North Stars moved to Dallas and became the Stars. And now you got guys that played high school hockey that grew up admiring Andy Moog and Mike Modano. You got guys playing in the NHL that are from the Metroplex. Like, it's, boy, talk about a market that a Gary Bettman maneuver that worked. That's phenomenal, you know?
Agreed.
Try to expand that reach and hit the South and the Southeast and the Southwest, and it's pretty much worked. I mean, that usually those types of moves are Arizona, the Phoenix Coyotes. That's sort of one that's, I think, backfired, but at the same time, there's folks down in Arizona coming out to play hockey. There's Arizona State's got a college program now.
A good college program. Flagstaff has a good program in Northern Arizona, and look at Austin Matthews grew up in Phoenix and made it. So I mean that has not been, I wouldn't say, a success. And let's see what happens with playing in a college arena this year, how that works. But why not? You know. But I mean, everybody up here is like, why don't they just move that team to Quebec City? That's got an arena built and is so desperately thirsty for a team, and you know, bringing the Quebec Nordiques back would be unbelievable for the NHL. But you know, I mean, you can't just rip a franchise away when the people there are committed to making it work. So
sure you can, Jeff. Come on, you know the NFL does it all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Where's Robert Irsay with his van at 2 a.m?
So it'll be the rare time that we actually have sort of a format in the show. I'll say it will be nearly the only time we have a format in the show other than a usual topic. But Jeff had wanted to go through some chatter, so we'll start. Who will we watch this year in the NHL, or players to watch and guys that have already gotten off to some pretty hot starts?
I wanted to. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you there. I wanted to kind of take a who to watch from a hobbyist perspective. Oh, the Stars or the Wild just scored, and So they're up 2-1. Who's number 21? Is that that's not Dumba, is it?
No, he's 25.
25. Okay, it's DU something. I did do.
Oh, Brandon Duheimer.
Yeah, that's who it is. Yeah. So okay. So anyway, I wanted to kind of talk about a couple of guys that are off to, maybe not off to early starts, but guys to watch this year, and guys that people are watching and what's going on with them. The first thing I want to talk about is Shane Wright in Seattle, because I mean, this guy was a prodigy as a junior. Really interesting situation with him because he played junior hockey with the Kingston Frontenacs in the Ontario Hockey League and got caught in the middle of COVID, where things were pretty much shut down up here nationwide, especially in Ontario, where the outbreak was probably the worst in North America. So his key developmental years, 16 and 17, he lost most of those seasons. And, he had been projected number one for so long, and Upper Deck signed him to a big contract. He was going to be, he had a big memorabilia deal, sort of like what Alexis Lafreniere had with the Rangers with Upper Deck the year before. And here you've got a situation where Shane Wright is, some people in hockey are saying he's being wasted this year. When you play junior hockey, you're allowed to go up and play in the NHL for 9 games before you're sent back down to junior, or depending on your age, to the AHL, without burning a year of your entry-level contract. And Shane Wright is 2/3 of the way through that, and he's playing 6-7 minutes a game. He's not playing meaningful minutes, and it's like, why have this guy? If you're going to want to get a good look at him and give him a good taste of what he needs to work on when he goes back down, why not put him in a situation where he can succeed? He's a fourth line checker. Obviously, I'm not a coach or a scout or a player personnel guy, but I mean, those are the questions everybody's asking. And what's going to happen with that is the people in the hobby that are so fickle, that are so like when you get to the investor level people, the get rich quick now, I can't wait till tomorrow people, they're going to abandon anything and everything to do with this guy, just as they did with Alexis Lafreniere last year, because he got off to a slow start, picked it up in the playoffs a bit, but he's not been an offensive point producer. Shane Wright is a very steady, very solid two-way player. He maybe doesn't have the upside of Tchaikovsky. I can't say his name. The Slovakian guy that Montreal drafted, so he was. It was kind of a shock that he dropped to 4th when Seattle was like waiting for him there at the draft. But there's a guy that he's gonna dip in the hobby, and then there will be a slow rebound. But expect him to play a couple more games. Maybe he'll get up to 9, 10, 11 minutes of ice time instead of a forward should be getting 15 to 20. So see what happens with him. He'll go back down to junior, where he really has nothing left to prove. There's always the World Junior Tournament coming up. Maybe he'll play for Team Canada there, get on the world stage a little bit. But a guy that people are really wondering what is going on with him, and that's one guy that the spotlight is kind of on. Another guy that sort of just skyrocketed out of the gate up here in Ottawa is Shane Pinto. He was a University of North Dakota guy. He was a second round draft pick, and a guy that is in last year's Upper Deck Series 1 Young Guns set. That was his first rookie cards, and he was in a lot of Upper Deck products last year. But he set a team record last night with his 5th goal in his 5th straight game as a rookie. So, and he, he stole the puck along the boards, went in and just laser beamed a shot. Kyle Wedgwood was in net for the Dallas Stars, And again, Kyle Wedgwood, a guy that at some point is going to get a chance because he was the Team Canada goalie and for the juniors a couple of years ago. A phenomenal goalie. He's backing up right now, but at some point he's going to be an A-level goalie in the NHL. So Shane Pinto's been really good. You've got a couple of guys on the Ottawa team that Drake Batherson in particular, a guy that had his rookie cards about 3 or 4 years ago, that he's exploding this year. Brady Tkachuk, Keith Tkachuk's son. He's having a phenomenal start to his year. I mean, his rookie cards go back a couple of years earlier, but those guys are starting to heat up now, and they've gone from sort of minor regional stars, and I would expect them to, as the Senators, I mean, everybody's expecting them to be the breakthrough team this year. I would expect that those guys really drive the hobby as they get national exposure. But Pinto, especially, if you can go back now and get a deal on some cheap ungraded cards of his rookie cards on eBay, get them before the whole hockey market catches up to him. That guy is something to watch. There's another guy from Montreal that I just love, and I don't know if you guys have seen clips of this guy yet, but Arbor Xhekaj.
Yep.
That guy's just like, I want to be like him when I grow up. Like, this guy's so cool, but he's a beast. He played junior hockey. He was undrafted in junior, but made it. He was undrafted in the NHL. He was playing for the Hamilton Bulldogs in the Ontario Hockey League last year. He's a defenseman. He's about 6'5", 240. He's a big boy. And if you love the Hanson brothers or Eddie Shore or anything from that era, this guy is your throwback. He is tough as nails. He hits. I think he's in the top 5 in the NHL in hits right now. He scored 16 points in 18 games in the OHL playoffs last year. He does have an offensive side to his game. He fights like Bob Probert. This is a guy that 3 months ago was working at Costco, and he was just working at Costco and trying to stay on the ice and get a tryout and whatever. And he got fired from his job from Costco because he was missing too much time for hockey. So now he made the Montreal Canadiens. He became the youngest undrafted Montreal Canadian ever to score a goal for the team, and as a rookie. And it's interesting because this year, and I'll go back to Ottawa for a second because Jake Sanderson is another guy to watch for. He's another North Dakota guy, a defenseman, but because of Cale Makar and what Cale Makar did last year, the hobby is very, very much more open to collecting defensemen. You're going to see more focus on defensemen. Cale Makar, the only 2 guys with stats as far as points per game for defensemen that Cale Makar is behind are Bobby Orr and Paul Coffey. If you look at career points per game in the regular season and playoffs, it's Orr, Coffey, Makar, and then Brian Leach. And it's not like he went and did it for 6 weeks. He's done it for a couple of years now. Cale Makar put the Avalanche on his back in the playoffs last year, and all of a sudden, for the first time, like, he is the most collectible defenseman since Bobby Orr already. And if you don't know a lot about Cale Makar, look at his highlight clips, read about him. I mean, he's a phenomenal guy as far as he'll own the Norris Trophy over the next decade for sure, unless somebody even better comes along. But he's that good, and it's funny when I work at Sens games, I'm with the alumni, and not just former Ottawa Senators players, but a lot of guys that are from the Ottawa area that played in the 70s or 80s. I was watching a game with Rick Smith, who actually played with Bobby Orr in Boston, and Rick was telling me that the only time I've ever seen a guy that can do the things he does, like the way he pivots, catches up to guys on a breakaway, his breakout passes, like all that stuff. He said it's like watching Bobby Orr all over again. He's that good. And that's really opened the door up for defensemen. So you get a guy, a hot rookie like Jake Sanderson, in Ottawa, you see a guy like Jacques in Montreal, who's basically becoming a cult hero.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, think back in the day. I mean, you guys focus on the '90s a lot on your show, and it's like, okay, who did we have in the '90s? We had Bork and Chelios, and Brian Leach to an extent. Not even Zubov, not even like there just were so few defensemen that really got love from the collecting industry. Makar is getting there, and I don't know if you guys ever seen his. There's the NHL.com has a game used puck program, which I find funny because 25 years ago this year, I introduced a game used puck program at Pinnacle, which it's taken a full generation for it to come back and for the NHL to pick it up. But he signs his autograph on an Avalanche puck, and then underneath he writes, "Dude, where's Makar?" And so for Cale Makar to do that on his autograph, I think that is so cool. But yeah, there's a lot of guys to focus on, and it's funny because some of the guys that are really, when their rookie cards first come out, there's so much hype about them. Quentin Byfield, he hasn't become what the hobby is expecting him to. Another upper deck signee. Cole Caulfield had a horrible start to his year last year, but then really turned it on in the second half and kind of started to live up to the hype. But that's the funny thing with when you look at the Young Guns cards, they come out, people get them graded right away. The 9s and 10s sell for hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and then the players cool off because they don't become superstars right away. And then sometimes it takes a while, and sometimes they don't. Kamil Kriprasov in Minnesota, not a lot was expected from him out of the gate, but he, within a month of the season, was really tearing things apart, and he seems to have kept pace, living up to what he was in Russia before he came over here. So,
and as we were talking about Cale Makar, he scored against the Rangers, power play goal.
Yeah, he's just he can do everything, and he's so comparable to Coffey or Bork. Maybe he's got Coffey's skating ability and Bork's puck sense. Like he's just a great player, and he's going to be a generational player. And he's only about 23 or 24 years old. I mean, we've got a lot of career left for him to follow. So he's gonna be a fun guy to collect throughout his career for sure.
And that Colorado's been built up. Sakic's built them up, where they've got a bunch of their core locked up for the next at least 3 years. So I mean, you've got a good base around you, so you're not having to, like, if you're in Columbus or you're in Arizona or somewhere there where it's always changing over, always a rebuild. It seems you're going to have a consistent base for at least, okay, we're at least going to be in the playoffs. We're probably going to make a deeper run just because of the depth, and then acquiring somebody at the deadline. So that way you'll be in that national spotlight, get that attention, and get the hobby love. Hopefully that he really deserves, because he's just been going to fantasy. You rarely see the defenseman in like the top 10. Even Adam Fox was, I think, ranked ESPN wise about 25, 30. And he had a great season last year, but Makar was a top 10 pick, where you don't see that. You don't see the love just overarching in every aspect of the hockey community, and they've got it rightfully so for Cale Makar.
And if you're in a fantasy league where you have to have so many forwards, so many defensemen, a goaltender, whatever, Makar and Fox are so far ahead of everybody as far as how they rank right across the board. But Fox, you haven't seen Fox as dominant in the hobby as Makar has been. But I mean, the Rangers are moving up too. Panarin's off to a fantastic start, and the one guy that really has been overlooked, especially, you talk about fantasy, you talk about the hobby, but in the last 2 years, Mika Zibanejad in New York has been just a monster. And every now and then you turn around and he's got a 4-goal game, or he's whatever. And there's not a lot of attention given to him because they've got so many other stars around him. So I would expect them to have a really good run this year too. And I think, everything right now, every team is in a sort of getting their feet wet, feeling things out stage and phase. But I would think that the Rangers are going to make a run this year. Colorado, the West is theirs to lose. And I don't know if they have anybody other than St. Louis that can really give them, Dallas is a good team, but I think Colorado is just at another level. And I think by the time the spring comes around, St. Louis will be there again too. But there's always teams that come out of nowhere. So.
Yeah, your Ottawa team, that's going to be one that I watch. You said Batherson, you said Tkachuk, Pinto and Sanderson, Chabot, Zub. I'm trying to think. I know there's another one. And Stutzel. It's just
Josh Norris. There's so much depth there. Yeah. Artem Zub has been really good on defense. He's a local hero, and Chabot is an elegant skater. Great. He still makes mistakes, but he was always criticized for making mistakes, but he was playing 35 minutes a night. Mm-hmm. And now that they've got some depth, they've got Sanderson coming up. They've got Jacob Bernard Docker kind of waiting in the wings. Like they're getting some depth behind him where he doesn't have to carry the load that he has been. I think Ottawa's still one defenseman away from contending, and they probably, it's a little bit of a question mark. How good is Forsberg going to be in net? They had Magnus Hellberg play his first game last night. He came over from the KHL, and he was the game's first star in his first NHL game. And he's a big dude. He's 6'7", and he coming off the ice, he looked at a couple of the reporters and he said, "Have you ever seen a goalie as big as me?" And everyone just said, "Ben Bishop was bigger than you." But he's a fun guy, and you just need. The problem Ottawa had last year is that in the month of November they went 2-13 or something. It was gross what happened, but they were trying to force Matt Murray into the net. Matt Murray, because he had a huge contract and he was playing hurt, and we have a huge rivalry with the Toronto Maple Leafs up here, and it was almost we were celebrating. Not only did we get rid of Murray and his contract, but we gave it to Toronto. So it's like a double win. And then the first game of the season between Ottawa and Toronto, Murray got hurt in the pregame skate. So it's like, well, there you go. It's just the guy can't stay healthy, and he can't catch a break. There were times when he was on his game the last couple of years where he was outstanding, but it just didn't happen enough because he kept, minor injuries, tweaks, and pulled muscles and this and that. So yeah, it's a fun year here. I think it's going to be fun in Detroit also, watching the Red Wings rebound. And I think that Lucas Raymond is going to emerge as a hobby star too. He's not off to a big start. I think he's only got 2 assists. But the one thing when I worked at Pinnacle and when I worked at Pacific, looking after the hockey products, Meijer was our largest retail account in the country for hockey, and the Meijer stores are so big in Michigan. And as the Red Wings went, so did sales. A poor Red Wings year meant the numbers were so correlative of the success of the team and the success of some of the players back then. Steve Yzerman, Sergei Fedorov, and later than that, Nicholas Lidstrom drove all the product sales, and they had other guys come and go like Hasek and Coffee and things like that. But those were Steve Yzerman was sort of the core guy that sort of was the face of that franchise. And hockey cards, the hockey card industry is about players. It's not about the sport. It's not even about the team. It's about the superstars. And if you've got a superstar on a successful team that's winning in your largest market, like that's a complete success formula. It's a perfect storm, and so we'll see. I mean, every market regionally has their top stars, but if Detroit really really takes off, I mean, Dylan Larkin is big there too, but Raymond is the sort of the rookie from last year that everybody's waiting to explode, because he's got so much potential as well.
Vinny, anything to add since you were a Red Wings connoisseur?
I'd say Cider. He's kind of slow off the rip this year, but he's going to be solid. I think those two guys, if you look at Series 2 last year, those two drove it out the gate with Zegras and Caulfield in Series 1. So there is big potential for those two to be big names in Red Wing country. You know, there's still a debate. Some of the old school guys don't like the fact that Larkin is captain. They don't know if he was ready for it yet. I'm a big fan of Bertuzzi. He's just oozes 90s hockey with the missing tooth and the flow and just the way he plays the game. He just loves it. It's sort of like why in juniors with Zegras and Caulfield, those kids they live it, they breathe it. It's just so fun to watch again. I haven't had this much fun watching hockey in 4 or 5 years with these young kids because they're so good. The stick handling's back, the puck control, the stuff, the amazing one-on-ones are all back from like the 90s. And I remember Lemieux tearing down the ice and just saying, oh, that keeper's just done. And boom, right in the back of the net. But then you got guys like Vasilevsky who says, bring it. And then he puts that, 22-year kid in his place. It's a fun game to watch. It's never a there's not a chance that I wouldn't be watching hockey if it's on. I got the NHL network now, so I'm like in seventh heaven because every night my wife wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning and looks at me, must you? I'm like, yes, I must. Why? Every night. Baseball season, it's the Major League Baseball network. Hockey season, it's NHL. And now I get up on the weekends and watch Premier League in the morning because my daughter plays soccer. So if you'd asked me that 20 years ago, I'd have called you a liar, but something about soccer is fascinating me now. So
nothing like a good 0-0 draw,
I have a local pro team. We're going we play in the semifinals Sunday. 25 boys that are just great kids. And my daughter's 11, my youngest. And those boys and her are just thick as thieves. So if she didn't have school Monday, we'd be driving to Chattanooga to watch them play because to watch kids that love the game that much it's just like hockey. It's a different breed. The love of the game is different. It's like they'd play it for free if they had to.
So that would be the NASL then, wouldn't it?
For what?
The soccer you're talking about, is that NISA?
NISA.
NISA, okay.
Yeah, it's one lower than USL.
Okay.
So it's what the English refer to as third tier football.
Yeah. I think Ottawa had a team in that league a couple of years ago, but then Canada started its own league under MLS, and we're in the championship game this weekend, and the team started out getting $1,500 a game, and they're going to get about 12 to 15,000 for the final, and so it's growing at the grassroots level, but it's and I mean it's interesting with soccer because that was soccer, Major League Soccer kind of in the World Cup in '94 kind of really planted the seeds for soccer to grow in the United States in the '90s. And I remember Upper Deck was really promoting Major League Soccer and its MLS cards. They were trying to promote Tony Meola and some of the other stars, but it really took a generation. And what people, and again, I know I've been on this show here, and I've said that a lot of the problems in the '90s with the hobby was that the people calling the shots weren't collectors; they just were people that liked sports, and they didn't understand the mindset of the collector, and they just figured that since soccer was so popular and so many people played, that soccer cards would work. But you need superstars, and now the league and you're seeing stars develop. Now you're seeing Ronaldo and some of these European worldwide stars being put on the same pedestal in the hobby as star baseball players. And you never would have seen that a generation ago. But now, I know Panini is largely responsible for that with all the things they've been doing in Europe. But it's really interesting how that evolved. I have I got the DAZN package this year because they show English Championship League, which is one lower than the Premier League, because the team where my family's from is the Hull City Tigers, and so now I get to see the Hull City Tigers every Saturday morning at 10 Eastern time, and my wife's just like, oh God, another team. When it's funny, you talk about the Major League Baseball Network. Last year when I was recovering from my surgery, I was at home, and I watched more than 500 games in one season. I was at home, and I was like, okay, what would 12-year-old me want to do? And it was just like, get the scorebooks out, and I watched 500 games, and it was just the greatest summer of all time. It was so good, and the playoffs this year have been incredible. Yeah, actually, I brought some show and tell with speaking of the playoffs. Now, you remember when my beloved Expos moved to Washington, of course. So I figured after they moved, I had to get an Expos Bryce Harper jersey, because he should have been in Montreal, but Bryce Harper, like, I can't even believe that home run that he hit the other day. Like that was one of the greatest moments in baseball history, as far as I'm concerned. And so many people criticize this guy, and so many haters, but I love everything about this guy. Yeah, and ever since he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a high school phenom, it's like this guy is absolutely unbelievable, and clutch and talented, and it's like, then you go back and it's like, oh yeah, he was in, what was it, the 2008 or 2009 USA set, and,
yep.
How much is that stuff skyrocketing right now? It probably didn't sell at all when Upper Deck put it out, and now you're going back and here was a guy that, I mean, last year he was the MVP last year, and he wasn't even on the All-Star team. Like figure that one out. But you talk about some of the great players that have emerged. How much more collectible is Julio Rodriguez, because they expanded the playoffs and he got to perform in prime time with the Mariners this year on a national stage. Like you're seeing some of the great players really step up and take advantage. There's so many great young players. It's just like hockey. There's so many great young players. There's no bad team to go see. If you're in an NHL city and you want to see a game, every single game there's somebody worth going to see. Even teams that aren't that good, or the teams that are lower in the standings, like there's a couple of superstars and there's a couple of guys that'll bring you out of your seat. And the parity is that good, and it's the same in baseball. Who wants to go see the Pittsburgh Pirates? Well, I want to go see the Pittsburgh Pirates because I want to see O'Neill Cruz play. I want, like, there's somebody on every single team. I'd go see the Cincinnati Reds because I want to see Jonathan India play. Like there's guys everywhere that are just worth the price of admission, and it speaks to the coaching, the athleticism, everything that we're seeing, and it's a great time to be a sports fan and a collector, as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's just and what a great year for rookies this year. Like, just so many great players coming out.
It's this is probably close to my favorite time of the year, sports wise. I've said before, like right around the NCAA tournament, but you lose football a month before. You have the hockey winding down, your basketball winding down, the NCAA men's basketball heating up. But right now, you've got baseball coming to the crescendo. You've got football mid-season. You've got hockey starting. NBA is just starting in about a week or two. You've got the NCAA just starting. There's so much going on, and it's the perfect time because, like you, the 40 below coming up, I've got that same problem. I really don't want to go outside and do much when it's that cold. I don't need to be outside in that type of weather. With the Hulu Plus, I can watch the hockey. It's probably better than whatever the hockey ticket, if they've got one of those still. I can watch probably 4 or 5 games a night, and I get to miss the Wild, which again this year isn't a bad thing, but that makes me follow other teams I normally don't follow. I've got an interest in, hey, I like Spencer Knight for Florida. Let's see if he's in goal tonight, or if it's Bobovsky, or see how what match is doing down there. I don't know. I love this time of year. It's so much going on. So many players. I harken back to like Andrew Jones, basically coming out of nowhere in '96 as like this young kid for the Braves, and he takes off and becomes that unknown to the superstar. That's the perfect time of year for this stuff to go on. Season starting, people coming out from the woodwork or under the radar. Unexpected heroes in the playoffs for baseball. It's just fun, and that makes the sports world fun, and getting away from the real world nonsense that constantly seems to be dribbling in every corner of the room these days. So yeah,
it's interesting, Dave, that you say that because there are always sort of two schools of people who are collectors. There's the people who are the investors or the hunters, and they want to find a signed refractor out of 5 whatever color. And then there's I'm part of the second group, which is collecting. To me is an extension of being a fan. It's part of my fan experience. I collect complete sets. I put them in binders, and I have the binder put into sheets by team, and I sit there with the binder on my lap while I watch games, and I flip through the stats and the cards, and maybe I should have my phone and hockeydatabase.com instead. But it's just it enhances the experience of being a fan for me. And yeah, I love pulling rookie cards, and I love seeing my cards go up in value. And I'm of course going to have my great cards graded and everything like everybody else does. But I'm not hunting for that $1 million card or anything, because I don't believe, having worked in the industry for so long, I don't believe in the $1 million card because it's look at last year, Ronald Acuna Jr. Look at how the value of his cards roller coastered. I mean, if you want the thrill like that, like go on Quest Trade or whatever, like the hobby is not maybe a sustainable thing. We went through this when the hobby crashed in the late 90s, because everybody thought they were going to get rich off of their case of 1990-91 Upper Deck French hockey that they had squirreled away while Upper Deck was reprinting it, or how many people were squirreling away Bowman stuff in the early 90s expecting it to be worth millions. It doesn't happen, and so it's a fun thing, but I love I love how the game and the performance of players and the likability of some players is connected to popularity in the hobby too. And I mean, I even was paying attention to walk-up music this year. Who's the coolest guy with the coolest it started with that old SpongeBob thing in Cleveland, but then it's just and then Edwin Diaz and with the Mets and Like those are the little things that are really hooking me as a fan. And it's funny here in Ottawa. I mean, they're totally ripping off Fernando Tatis Jr. But they have somebody had a big chain with a Sens logo that appeared, and all of a sudden at the arena now at the fan shop, they're selling them a dozen a minute. these chains with Sens logos, and fans are wearing them everywhere. And it's like those are the kind of the fun things that really capture fans. And collecting to me is part of that. It's a real kind of outlet as a fan. And you know, I mean, I think when Fanatics takes over the world as far as the hobby goes, I think they recognize that, and I think that they'll kind of push that because they want to. Yeah, exactly. They want to get the mainstream fan that's not a collector into collecting. We're very fortunate here in Canada that we have the Tim Hortons hockey program. You know, and we figured that, I mean, I don't know the numbers, but we were trying to crunch numbers and do math. We figured that they sold well over 10 million packs of cards this year for $1.90, a buck each for 3 cards if you're buying a drink, or $1.99 for not a drink. So if you're buying 10 packs, it's $1, and then 9 times $1.99. And it's such a it introduces every single family and every single kid to collecting, because everybody goes to Tim Hortons in Canada. It's like, you know, it's like McDonald's plus everything else in the States. And to get the exposure to the hobby and to collecting in front of the mass population with a national TV program, a national TV campaign with Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon, it only helps the hobby and introduces everybody to collecting. So I hope Fanatics will do the same type of thing in the States and mainstream the hobby a little more.
And I like, I've always said this, if I would have had the talent to be some sort of player of not even recognition, if you make whatever professional, like let's say the highest professional league, even the league below the top professional, take 10 minutes maybe before or after the game, talk to the fans, talk to the kids. If more athletes did this, again, prices won't come down, which it's a big hindrance for a lot of these tickets, but you would have so many more fans. And I wish the guys that didn't take the time with the kids were in that position as kids themselves. We're like, hey, my favorite player's right there. If he just waves or says, hey, how's it going? That is huge to get somebody into investing more, not even financially. Just having them say, hey, how's it going? You enjoying the game? I mean, you'll have a starstruck kid, but that's what you want. And then tap them on the shoulder, ruffle the hair, and be like, hey, have fun tonight, or whatever. It's like, you could, if players just for 5 minutes, it doesn't have to be every game, doesn't have to be every like series. Just do that. If they see kids over there with their jersey on, well, somebody bought it for them. They obviously like you. Go over there. And I think if Fanatics can sort of tie in with the fan experience somehow that way, again, not forcing people, but I mean, if you start to roll the wheels in the head there and say, this is what we should be doing. We should have been doing this all along. You see the jerseys at the end of the game sometimes get tossed in the stands. People give away the shoes. I think LeBron does that quite a bit. But I mean, the end of the hockey games, you're the 3 stars, you get a puck. I saw in Ottawa last night, they get a stick in the hallway and they throw that up in the crowd. Like, that's cool. You're getting something from the game where, again, you're just cheering your team. And hey, Marcus Hellberg comes over here after beating Dallas 4-2, hasn't played more than 5 or 6 NHL games in the last 6 years. Sort of pretty much the definition of a journeyman. He comes over in his best game and tosses me a stick or a puck. It's like, that's cool. I'm buying into it now because I watched a good game again, getting free stuff is always good, but at the same time, it's like this guy came over to my area, threw the stick there. This player saw me wearing their jersey and said, "Hey, what's up?" For me as a kid, I would have went batshit crazy if somebody came over to me. And even as an adult, if I was watching like Dennis Northcutt in his waning days, or Josh Johnson, I've been like, if they would have came over to me and said, "Hey, what's going on?" I would have probably been a 12-year-old kid at 30 years old or whatever, because it just, you don't expect that and you wish that would happen more. And you could tie that into the hobby too, because again, hey, my player, I don't really collect cards, but Mike Trout just came and said hi to me. That's cool. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. gave me some dap or whatever, threw me his batting gloves. I'm like, that's awesome. So then you're like, well, do they have cards? And the parent might not be hip to the game. They might like, well, they had cards when I was a kid, and then you can get that ball rolling that way. So I'm hoping somehow Fanatics can figure something out that way. A long-winded jive by me, which every episode has, and it's a good bathroom break for anyone that's watching at home that isn't on screen right now. So,
I'm wearing adult Depends, so I'm okay. But you raise a couple of good points, and baseball and hockey are doing it right. Like the clips of Aaron Judge signing autographs before a playoff game in Toronto, or a game in Toronto during the playoff stretch, or you see Mike Trout playing catch with kids who are in the stands, and these guys don't just do it for home games; they relish doing it for away games because they know that they're on the villain team and whatever, but they're just creating an experience for kids. If you go to an NHL game, one of the coolest trends, and it's going on not just here, but it's going on everywhere, is that they let like during the warm up, they let everybody come down to ice level, and all the kids have, it's almost like ESPN College Game Day. All the kids have signs up and trying to get the players' attention, and the players are constantly going over and tossing pucks over the glass to kids, or fist bumping them through the glass, or you'll see a kid wanting to take a selfie with a player, and the player will pose for a selfie. Like you'll see all kinds of stuff like that going on every single game during warm-up, and hockey players get it. Baseball players get it. You'll never see that in the NFL because I think the players are just too focused on what they're doing. I mean, it's a different sport with a different mentality. The NBA, I just don't think it's feasible for something like that to go on because it's the parameters of what's going on are just too different. But that's the thing too, is that the players understand. And if you go to an NHL game this year, go an hour early and watch what goes on. Players understand that the selfie is the new autograph, and the kids, it's not possible to reach through a crack in the glass and sign something with a Sharpie. But if you can stand there and the kid can just face the kid and he could turn around and take a selfie of both of you together. I mean, you're seeing that all through game warm-ups from both the home and away teams, and it's really remarkable to see that connection. And it all goes back to what card collecting is why do we collect? Take the speculative investor out of it, because that part of the market comes and goes. Why do we collect cards? And this is one of the really important things that we talked about at Pinnacle when I was there, is that you are trying to create an emotional connection between yourself and the player through this piece of cardboard. You have somebody, you're a Jets fan. You have the Joe Namath rookie card of the tall boy from '65, where the photo was taken in the hospital. That card is like a connection between you and Joe Namath if you're a Jets fan, or if it's any other player in his rookie card. Especially if it's an iconic rookie card, it's the same. It's the same kind of thing. And if you have a memorabilia card of somebody, and that's why that's why this is all important. It's all about making an emotional connection, and it's not sport or team driven. It's player driven, and 100% player driven.
Any other players we should talk about? The only one I can think of that's off to like a good start, Rasmus Dahlin for Buffalo. 5 goals in 5 games. I think first defenseman ever to do that. So
Yeah, and that gets back to the Cale Makar thing. And Rasmus Dahlin was the guy that everyone accused the Sabres of after they tried to tank to get Austin Matthews. They failed. They legitimately tanked. They didn't even have to try to tank to get Dahlin, but another guy, Owen Power is another guy. I mean, watch for him coming up. I mean, and who'd have thought? Like when you look at what's happened in the NHL last 3 years, you've got Tampa Bay has been sitting on top of the Eastern Conference for years, and I mean, you mentioned Vasilevsky earlier, probably going to become the greatest goalie in NHL history if he keeps up what he's doing. People can't see that now, but I think that as time goes on, I mean, he's going to be definitely the Martin Brodeur of the next decade, or the Patrick Roy, what he was in the 80s, or what Ken Dryden was in the 70s, and Owen Power and Dahlin give Buffalo. Plus, Craig Anderson is the top goalie in the NHL at 41 years old now in Buffalo. So think of all of a sudden you've got Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo as the 3 power teams in the Eastern Conference, and doesn't that smell like 2004? Like it's taken a full generation for those teams to cycle to the bottom and cycle back up, and all doing it at the same. They all went down at the same time, and they're all coming back up at the same time. So it's really interesting to see that. But Dahlin is he's a special player, and again, a guy that was highly touted in the hobby and was considered a bust for a year or two, and now look at what's happening.
yeah, and they've got parts around him too. So that's the thing in Buffalo, where again, you made some trades. You got rid of Eichel, but you get Alex Tuch back.
And Alex Tuch is another guy that's and Alex Tuch loves being in Buffalo. He's an upstate New York guy. He's happy to be home. He grew up a Sabres fan. It's like he's in heaven playing on this team, and it's where he wants to be. He'll be a lifer there. He'll be Gilbert Perreault 2.0 for that team. And when you've got guys that buy in and want to be there, that are that good. I mean, that was a great move, and I don't know if Vegas will ever regret that deal. I mean, they're getting a great player in Eichel, but an injury-prone player. But Tuch has been a perfect fit in Buffalo. So again, Buffalo is a great market. When you look at the top hockey retailers and hockey dealers in the United States, Dave and Adams in Buffalo has to be among the top 3, if not number 1. As far not only as far as volume and the quality of their store and their customer service, but as far as the influence they have on the hobby and how much they drive the hobby. So they've got that market, and that's another thing. Like, again, going back to when I worked in the industry, you look at the regional markets. Detroit and Buffalo in the United States were massive markets for us.
And again, it's not like the centralized or the biggest markets per capita, if you will, but it's when you have that rabid fan base all buying in, that's when you see the successes. You're going to have the New York, the LA, wherever, Chicago's, but when you get the smaller markets, like Detroit, Buffalo, even Minneapolis, St. Louis, when you have those types of areas, not little townships, but when you get all those teams and all those fan bases and all that success going, you then you start to reap the rewards, and I'm sure see everything like come to fruition and be like, oh, good, this is what we wanted. This is how it's supposed to be in the grand vision and the grand scheme of things.
Is Steve still the hockey oracle, by the way? Is it
Forever?
Okay, good. Just want to make sure he's got that title.
No.
Big belt.
Forever.
Need like a crown or something.
He needs the
Like
chain.
a Gazoo helmet from the Flintstones, like the Oracle helmet. You know, like.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'm an idea guy, you know.
There you go.
If
Now,
I was still at Pinnacle, we would have purchased Fernando Tatis's thing around his neck and cut it up and put it into cards before he went to the veterinarian to get whatever he needed that made him not a Hall of Famer anymore.
well, not right now. I still see their success. I mean, this isn't Rafael Palmeiro, or I won't say like even a Brady Anderson. Like, wow, 51 home runs when you didn't even have 50 home runs your first 7 years in the league, and then you drop off.
Chris Sabo.
Yeah, like something doesn't smell right there. No, really.
If
Really?
the team bus pulls over on the highway in the middle of Iowa and the whole team gets out to pee, if the grass and weeds grow a foot before the bus pulls away, you know something are wrong.
The farmers are happy though.
Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about next, Jeff? We've got a myriad of topics.
I want to talk about the 1972 Canada-Russia Summit Series, because the 50th anniversary of that series was a couple weeks ago, and it's kind of interesting that I mean that hockey series, the entire country in Canada stopped. Every single Canadian stopped what they were doing to watch that show, because I mean in 1972, you know, the options were limited. The Olympics were going on, and if for those of you old enough to remember 1972, I was 8 when this all went down, but the Munich Olympics were going on. Olga Korbut was becoming a star. Mark Spitz was becoming the star. We had that huge tragedy with the Israeli Olympic athletes being murdered by the Palestinian terrorists, and so there was a lot going on in the world. Watergate was going on, like in other stuff. But when you look at how that whole thing came about in 1972, I mean the Russians had won because they could use basically professional players in amateur competitions, and pros couldn't compete in the World Championships or Olympics. They had no competition, and they were open to a series against NHL All-Stars, and it became one of these things where everybody in Canada just thought, oh my God, this will be no competition at all. We're going to destroy these guys. And the Russians, and then of course the first game starts, Canada scores 30 seconds into the game, and then they get another quick goal, and everybody's thinking, oh, this is going to be a joke. And then before you know it, the Russians win the game 7-3. And then they left Canada having won more games than, I think it was two wins, a loss, and a tie for the Russians, and then they went back to the Soviet Union, and the series. I mean, it was so much bigger than the Miracle on Ice. That's what the American sort of reference point is. It was so much bigger than that because pros had never played these Russians. We had never seen hockey played like this, where they have 5 guys skating, and they the first guy dumps it in, the second guy goes to the net, and you know, we were used to just a different style. The Soviet Russian team, or the Soviet team in 1972, that was the first time anyone in North America saw anybody cycle a puck in the corner. They still do that in the NHL. Like the way that they train, the way that the systems worked, really changed hockey. And I mean, you know, Paul Henderson scores the game-winning goal in Game 6, 7, and 8 to win the series. For some godforsaken reason, he's not in the Hall of Fame, but the guy that he scored the goals on is, and players on the Russian team that he beat are in the Hall of Fame. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So somebody's got to fix that at some point. But it was really interesting because this 72-73 O-Pee-Chee card set came out in 3 series, and the second series had an insert set, 1 per pack. They had these Team Canada cards where there were 28 players on Team Canada. They dressed 20 per game, but they carried 28. And it was really interesting because back then, insert cards were just like fillers. They weren't really, people didn't want them. They weren't anything of. It was just like a filler card. And I don't think people, it wasn't until like the Diamond Kings came around a decade later that people started to see some value in some of these cards and sets. And you're seeing complete sets of that Team Canada set kind of pop up right now. You see those sets selling on eBay for about $250 now. You'll see them at sets. You'll see them at shops for about $250. Like, but they are moving, and there's interest. And at Pinnacle in 1997, when I was there as the hockey brand manager, it was the 25th anniversary of that series, and we were in our meeting for certified hockey, and somebody just asked a question there, is what do you think of Winnipeg stripping Blake Wheeler of the captaincy? I'm not in Winnipeg, so I don't really know what the feeling is there, but the optics from outside of Winnipeg are that just looks like a little bit of a locker room implosion. And it just smells of dissension and uncertainty, and things need to be fixed. I mean, there's been a lot of change in Winnipeg. The guy I really like in Winnipeg is an assistant coach there named Marty Johnson, and I'm really glad that he's getting an opportunity in the league. But he's been a phenomenal coach here in the Ottawa area. But I mean, if you're going to strip a guy of captaincy, I think your next move is you got to trade him because that's just too personal. I think that's going to cause dissension, and that's going to cause division in the locker room. So I think that it's one thing to strip the guy, but what's your next move? What's your plan? So we don't know what the plan is for him yet, but yeah, I don't like that. I mean, it just doesn't look right. So anyway, getting back to certified hockey, that was, we have these meetings where we would have to pitch our products to all the VPs at Pinnacle, and I was so excited because I had contacted Paul Henderson, and I had figured this whole thing out, and I had a big smile on my face, and I said, and I just assumed hockey fans knew about the Canada-Soviet series, and I was wrong. And I said, so the big driver, this is going to be Paul Henderson Team Canada autographs, and it was just like crickets in the room. And one of the guys is like, who the hell is Paul Henderson? And I was like, what? And so I had to explain to this room full of executives in the States who Paul Henderson was, what the Summit Series was. Some of them had heard of it that were hockey fans, but they didn't really know what it meant and how hugely important and cultural. I mean, and it's funny because we were sitting there in our office building in Dallas, and I look out the window and I see the grassy knoll, and I just said, okay, everybody look out the window and look at the grassy knoll. I said, does everybody who was old enough, and I was the youngest guy in the room at that point. I was born like 3 weeks after Kennedy was shot. I said, do any of you guys remember where you are and what you were doing when President Kennedy was shot? Oh, yeah, I remember. I was doing this and doing that. And like everybody remembered the moment. I said, Paul Henderson's goal is our Canadian moment. Paul Henderson's goal is our Kennedy being shot. It's our Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. That's our moment. And so Jim Brockhausen, our sales VP, didn't believe me. So he gets on the speakerphone in the middle of the floor, and he calls our Canadian distributor, Barry Cathcart, and and Grant Arbuckle. They were from this company Arctos that did our distribution, and they were like, "Okay, do you guys know who Paul Henderson is?" And they just laughed, and they're like, "Morris says it's like the biggest moment in Canadian history." And Grant says, "Well, second. I mean, the biggest moment was probably when we burned down the White House in the War of 1812. But I mean, other than that, he was kind of joking when he said it. But yeah, that was a big deal, and that really drove the product. The only photo of that goal, I'm gonna show you a card here. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's certified, so it's the mirror board. That's Paul Henderson jumping into Yvon Cornway's goal. You can sort of see Tretiak lying down behind him, and that is autographed. The person who took that photo, and it became probably that photo and the Bobby Orr flying through the air after the cup-winning goal in 1970 are probably the two most famous photographs in hockey history. And this one was taken actually in Moscow by Denny Brodeur, who's Martin Brodeur's dad. And Denny Brodeur was a hockey photographer. We actually used him a lot with the card companies, because not only was he the Montreal Canadiens photographer, but he also was the one guy that had all the guys from the 70s and 80s when we were doing kind of retro stuff. If we needed a photo of Guy Lafleur, for example, or for an autograph, or Mike Bossy or anyone from that era, he was the guy that supplied the photos to us. The problem with that photo was that it was black and white. And the story behind that photo, and I got to spend some time with Denis, and he explained how the whole thing worked. He was there with shooting black and white film, and he became friends with a photographer from Izvestia, which is he was the photographer from Izvestia. They became friends, and so the guy from Russia would let Denny Brodeur come and use the darkroom at the Izvestia newspaper office. But all he wanted in return was, tell me stories about Ken Dryden. This guy was fascinated with Ken Dryden, so all he wanted to know was all about Ken Dryden, because the Russians were as fascinated with Dryden as Dryden was, and everybody here was, with Tretiak, the Russian goalie, who our scouts said was no better than a junior B goalie when they went to watch him play, which happened to be the day after his wedding, or actually the day before his wedding, when he was like not thinking about hockey and probably had a little bit of vodka in his system when they saw him. So Brodeur also, somebody had tipped him off that chocolate is very difficult to get in the Soviet Union. So he loaded his suitcase up with Mars bars and different chocolate things. So he'd get to the arena, and he found this usher that he befriended, and every game he'd give him a Mars bar, and the usher would take him right down to the best spot along the glass. And there were about 8 or 9 photographers from the United States and Canada. Sports Illustrated had sent a photographer down. There were some wire service guys, and there was a Toronto Star photographer and Denny Brodeur are the only guys that got good shots of the celebration from that goal, but their shots were black and white. So when I looked at this, it's like, we can't do a certified hockey card with a black and white photo, like on that mirror board. Like, can you imagine what a black and white photo would look like? I'm trying to get it here without glare, but that's not working out so well. Like just imagine what a black and white photo on that card would look like. It would be like a dog's breakfast. So at the expo in Toronto, and I just see our old friend Sanderson Duor saying that Henderson is signing at the expo, and that is absolutely fantastic. I'm so excited about that too. So there's an artist that was always at the expo named Daniel Perry, who's a sports artist, does phenomenal work. So Daniel and I had become friends over the years. So I called Daniel up and I said, how would you feel about Pinnacle using some of your Canada-Russia photos, which were all he used Denny Bruder's photography as the base of all these cards. How would you feel about us using your artwork and developing cards around it? So again, I'll hold this up. I should have scanned it and sent it to you guys so you could see. So you see the red maple leaf ghosted into the background. The background's black and white. There's a bit of a color blend with red going up into the photo. This guy's blocked here. The defenseman, right here. That's Liapkin, his name is, and he has this look of disgust on his face after the goal. It's like he's crying, and but I thought using Daniel's artwork in color would be phenomenal to make this Paul Henderson card work. So we did a whole series of Canada Soviet cards, and they look phenomenal. And then the next step was I had worked out a deal with Paul Henderson that he was going to sign 1,000 cards, and they're like, okay, so we want you to fly to Toronto and sit down with Paul Henderson to sign the cards. And I was like, like, is there a language limit in this show? Is it?
No, never.
Can I say I got the biggest sports boner in my life at that moment? So because I won't say it if I can't, but it was like I was like. I was just dumbfounded. Like I had never imagined I could ever sit down with Paul Henderson and talk about the 72 series. Like as a hockey fan, that was just, I'm like Paul freaking tap dancing Henderson and me sitting down signing cards. Like that was like one of the greatest moments of my life. Like at that point, and it didn't turn out that way. So anyway, I get to fly to Toronto, and we're at the near the airport in Toronto. There's a whole strip of hotels, and I think I was at the Hilton or one of the hotels near the airport. And Paul Henderson was coming to meet me, and we were going to do 700 in black pen, 200 in silver pen, and 100 in gold pen. I had the Sharpies, I had the cards. Of course, the cards had the peel off thing, the certified cards, so I had to peel them off ahead of time and make sure that they were okay. Like if you look at like this card, for example, from the Henderson set, I don't know if you can see the where it says peel off. You can see on the cards so this one hasn't been peeled, and that was of course another thing. Like, is the card worth more peeled, or is it, you want the peel off so the card will look nicer, but are you devaluing it? I mean, that was a whole other great argument about Henderson. So anyway, I get to meet Paul Henderson, and I told him the whole story about how I was 8 years old. I was in 5th grade, and I delivered a newspaper in the morning, and there was a story about how the Premier of Ontario wanted every kid out of school to be able to watch the game because of the time zone changes. The games were all at noon or 12:30 Eastern time, so they happened during the day, and we were routinely just not coming to school to watch the games, and people were just not going to work when the games were on. And so we had 3 classrooms in our school. It was a school out in the country, the type of school where some of the kids asked Santa for a pack of smokes for Christmas when Santa came. There were 12-year-old kids driving to school. Like it was rural. It was a country school, and so I was the big hero because I brought this into our principal, and the principal was like, "Yes, that's a great idea." Like, and so we wheeled in this black and white TV into the gymnasium, and all 50 kids in the school got to watch the game. And I got to tell Paul Henderson the story about that. And then I said to him, you must get like sick and tired of every single person you meet telling you what they were doing, who they were with, where they were, what they were wearing, what they were eating, like everybody remembers. And he said, no, that's been the greatest gift of this whole thing, is to just hear everybody's story and the impact. Like, he was a wonderful guy. So I've got the Sharpies lined up, I've got his chair lined up, I've got the cards all sorted out, and we're ready to do the signing. And he knew ahead of time that he was to sign the cards, and then I was bringing them back to Dallas. So he sits down and he looks at his watch, and he packs the cards up, puts them back in the box, and gets up and he says, okay, well, I got another appointment. I'll send these to you in the mail or by FedEx. Do you have a business card? And I was just like, well, you're supposed to sign them here. Yeah, I can't. Give me your card and I'll FedEx them to you. And I was like, oh my God. I flew to Dallas. I flew from Dallas to Toronto for him to sit down and have these cards signed. And he just bailed on me and he took the cards. And so the next day I fly to Dallas, I get to the office, and I'm just like crapping myself. It's like, their production department is waiting for the Paul Henderson autographs to do the pack out. Our CEO, Michael Cleary, a wonderful, wonderful guy, but I was terrified of him because, like, he was our CEO and I was a drone at the company. I was like an epsilon, and he's like, oh, how was Toronto? How was Paul Henderson? Oh my God, greatest guy in the world. Where are the cards? Paul Henderson is FedExing them because, and I'm thinking, like, what am I going to say to him? And it's like, well, we thought maybe there was going to be a problem getting him across the border, through customs and whatever. And he just looked at me and he knew I was completely bullshitting him. So it's like, I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to be fired. Paul Henderson is going to get me fired over these stupid autographs that were my idea. And then we're going to lose our house. I'm going to be deported. I'm going to lose my visa. I'm going to end up back in Ottawa where it's like minus 1,000 in the winter, and all this stuff going through my head. And then luckily, just a miracle of God, the next day a FedEx package arrives for me, and it's Paul Henderson and sent me the autographs. So he actually did sit down and sign them that night. But I was so scared that they weren't going to come in. So Certified Hockey was, it's the 25th anniversary of that incident happening, and Certified Hockey got out okay, and the Paul Henderson series and autographs really drove sales in the product. Everything worked out. I still see the autographs moving on the auction sites, and yeah, and it's funny when you look at that iconic photo and how many times in how many card sets has that photo been used over and over again. And I mean, you talk about some of the great sports photographers of the last generation, and some of the most talented people that have worked on cards. And that shot that Denny Brodeur got of that celebration with Cornway, I mean, that was just one of the, you have to, there's always a magical in the right place at the right time, shooting at the right speed moment. And the other thing that Denny Brodeur was telling me about that, because I used to do some photography too. When I worked at Collector's Edge, I did a lot of their NFL photography, and he was telling me that he was shooting Ilford black and white film, or no, he had Kodak black and white film. He was pushing the aperture to he had the aperture at 2.8. He had the speed at 500th of a second. He was shooting at like a 1600 instead of a 400 ASA or ISO, and it was just like he said there were 36 rolls of film or 36 shots on my roll of film, and then it would automatically, the motor drive would automatically rewind at the end. And he was shooting like, I think he had a motor drive, so he was shooting like 3 frames per second. And those shots of Cornway and Henderson were number 37 and 38 on his roll of 36. That roll gave him 2 extra shots before it rewound. And that was the 2 shots that were the money shots. And he said in his whole career, the only roll of film that has ever happened on, where he got 2 extra shots on the roll, was the roll of film with the Paul Henderson photos. And he said, I didn't know if I got it until we went back to my friend, his darkroom at Isvesia, and we developed the pictures. and then of course they were used by different books and different magazines and different for different things, and ended up. It's too bad that Denny passed away before he really saw, the 50th anniversary of that iconic photo and how many times it had been used in the hobby, and how many times Paul Henderson has autographed that card. The one thing that Denny Berger told me too that was really neat was he said, I never got to meet Paul Henderson. He said, I'm forever connected with him because of that photo. He said, but I've never met him. I would love to just sit down and talk to him. And he said, I know Paul Henderson knows that I took the photo because there's a 16 by 20 print of it that he autographed for Martin Brodeur and sent it to him. And so, yeah, Paul Henderson knows that I took that photo, but I would really love to sit down and have lunch with him or talk to him someday. And Denny Brodeur died, and he never got a chance to ever meet Paul Henderson. So it was really neat, like how that photo is tied into that card, and how that moment, and I mean, to the collector, 1997-98 certified hockey is just a product, one of probably about 55 that were out that year, because we were in the golden age of proliferation with the companies at that time, and like every single product had a little story behind it. Every product had to have some sort of a twist or some sort of a reason for being, and to me, like, there's a couple of really special things that I got to do in the hobby, but like I was responsible for the first Willie O'Ree card. I was responsible for the first Tom Brady NFL card. I think I told you guys that story last time I was on, and this Paul Henderson card, this autograph card, to me is probably one of the most special things I've ever done in the hobby, and it was a real, a scary and frightening experience to think that, oh my God, Paul Henderson's going to get me fired, but it all worked out for the best, and the product was a big success, which in 1997-98, not a lot of products were big successes, because it was the market was going through such contraction because of the number of products that were out there. So there's my Canada-Russia story for you.
Did he sign them in various colors, or they all end up being black?
There's 700 black ones, there's 200 silver ones, and 100 gold ones, and he got everything. He got everything right. Like, he followed the instructions, and so it was yeah, and what a nice guy, like just a real nice guy.
I just thought I'd ask, since he ended up, picking him up and taking him, making sure he followed directions.
Yeah, totally certified. That was I
know it's the serial numbered one, but
yeah,
that's about all I can provide with. Still, that's.
We found a loophole in our contract with the NHL, because we wanted to do another product, because the 7,000 that we were doing weren't enough, and the sales department came up to me and said, look, can you develop a product that is sort of like a parallel version of certified, that we can sort of sneak into our product lineup. So we pitched the NHL with an NHLPA with the idea, and of course all they saw was more royalties, so they loved it, and so there was a lot of math required in this thing, but that was the first. I sat down probably for a couple of days and sort of worked out everything, and that was the first fully serial numbered set in the hobby. Was the totally certified baseball and hockey products, and football, and it was weird, because just as that product was starting to really pick up steam as maybe the company's flagship or marquee product or brand, that's when that's when the wheels started falling off at Pinnacle, and it was, yeah, there was just a weird time what was going on there. It was I remember it was weird because we had our CFO left the company, and in about the next 6 to 8 weeks, we went through like 3 different CFOs. CFO would come, and in 2 or 3 weeks they'd bail. And then I remember somebody saying to me, one of the guys I worked with, you know what, when you see multiple, when you see musical chairs with the CFO, you better think that it's time to like put the parachute on and jump. And because this is a bad situation. And then we went, the company went bankrupt, and it all went down. And I can't remember if I told you guys this story or not. It all went down at the NHL draft in Buffalo in 1998, and I was there. I had we'd flown to Toronto. I had driven my ex-wife, and who was my current wife at the time, drove her and my kids up to near Pembroke, Ontario, to which is kind of way up, and like there's as many bears as people there, and so yeah, gotta be wary of the food chain when you're up there, and the bears are smart up there. They got coat hangers to get into your car with the, I made that part up, but I went back down to Buffalo, and yeah, I did tell you guys a story because I showed you my American Express card. My favorite ever Pinnacle card was my American Express card, and I go to get gas, and I had already rented a car, and my Pinnacle American Express card was canceled, and I was asked to come into the gas station, and I only had about like $30 of cash with me, and so I, back then, you could buy a tank of gas for $20, and so I got that, and then I picked up the USA Today, and there's a big story on the front page about the baseball card company Pinnacle being $300 million in the hole and declaring bankruptcy, and so I'm there in Buffalo with $10 in my pocket and no credit card, because I did not have a personal credit card at that time, because I had not lived in the United States long enough. They give every 12-year-old kid a Discover card, and I couldn't get one. So I ended up sleeping on Richard Scott's couch. Richard Scott he's a hobby guy that did some work with us at Canadian Sports Collector magazine, and I slept on Richard's couch, and then I was able to borrow enough money for a tank of gas to get home to my parents' place in Prescott, Ontario, which is right across the border from Ogdensburg, New York, and then borrowed some money from my dad so that I could go get my family and get back to the airport and get back home. And then when I got back to Pinnacle, I think there were like 100 and some employees when I left, and there were about 30 when I returned. So the axe fell, and it was a really bit of a dark time. And the funny thing is that right at that time, the #1 song on the Billboard charts that was always on the radio, and of course we always had music playing in the office, and Closing Time by Semisonic was like the #1 hit. So some clown would always like put the phone on speakerphone on the intercom and hold their phone up to the radio when Closing Time was playing. But it was pretty bad. But again, I talk about Michael Cleary, what an amazing guy he was. The one thing that he did for everybody was he turned one of the boardrooms on. We had 3 floors in the building we were at, and it got sort of condensed to one building. And Michael turned one of our boardrooms into basically a job hunt site for everybody that lost their job. Like if you lost your job and you were laid off at Pinnacle, you got to keep your parking pass. You could come in and use the building. You could use the printer, and you could use the use your computer, you could do whatever, and it became like a job search headquarters. And Michael did that for everybody, and it was incredibly kind gesture, because he was in a bad situation, and a very compassionate thing to do, because I don't think a lot of people would do that necessarily. When Pinnacle went under, I was one of the last 7 people there, and we left our floor and moved like I was the only person on my floor at the end, and what I was doing basically was I was fulfilling redemption cards for a Game Use Puck program. We mentioned the Game Use Puck earlier. So the first thing I wanted to do when I got to Pinnacle was I wanted to give away a Game Use Puck from every game through redemption cards in all of our series across brands. And we worked out this program with the NHL where we got all the pucks sent to us, and our customer service team was looking after it. And then all of a sudden there's no customer service team. So I was the guy sending pucks out to people, and then I had to clear the floor that I was on and move my stuff kind of one floor up where everyone else was. And, there's another guy bringing boxes of computers and stuff in, and I kept holding the elevator open for him and chatting with him and whatever. And I told you guys this before. It was Mark Cuban, and he had he had leased our space to start broadcast.com, which he later sold to Yahoo for like $1.5 billion. And he was just this guy with an Indiana t-shirt and baggy sweats and unlaced Converse high tops, and nicest guy in the world. That was kind of the most bizarre Pinnacle moment was how Mark Cuban took our lease over. And I guess our floor wasn't cursed because he was pretty successful with what he did, whereas we weren't. But yeah, that was a really interesting time at Pinnacle. We had some really talented and creative people. There was one guy that designed a lot of our cards, we always talk about the inserts and the cards and the designs and whatever. We had a team of designers. Our head designer was a guy named we had a guy named Scott Kelly who came from Donruss. He was gone by this point. Tony Craich had worked for Upper Deck, and he came to Pinnacle. He ended up back at Upper Deck. For all I know, he may still be there now. But Tony's cards have a very, very similar look. If you're a real football card aficionado, you'll notice that the collector's edge stuff from around 99, 2000 has a very similar look to a lot of the Pinnacle stuff that was out, and that's which also looked a lot like the 94-ish Upper Deck, 94, 95 Upper Deck things that were going on. That was Tony's work had a really distinct, a lot of linear blends and a lot of different design elements going on. And he was an incredible designer, and Tony sort of led our design team at Pinnacle. We had a couple of girls that worked that we had hired from Hallmark that were very talented, and then we had another guy that came in, and his name was John Cable, and one of the most fascinating guys I ever met, because John was I'm pretty sure he's got a Wikipedia page. John was a guitar player in the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, and turned into a graphic designer, soccer dad driving a van whose daughter played competitive soccer, and John, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and was one of the first American rock bands to tour Moscow and to tour Russia, and John was very involved with I don't know exactly what he did, but it was something like he was teaching music and guitar stuff over there to them. So he had a connection with that was global, and here he was designing cards for us. And the greatest thing about it is that we put together for our Christmas party in 1997. We put together a band for our Christmas party, and we had we had John Cable playing guitar and singing. We had a girl named Cynthia Herndon that worked in our credit department that was a backup singer for Stevie Ray Vaughan. We had a guy named Brad Bartlett who still works for Optographics, which was a division of Pinnacle. Brad runs Optographics, and Brad was the Pointer Sisters drummer in the '80s and toured with them. We had all these people with this incredible musical experience. Dave Hicks, one of our art and production VPs, played in a big Christian band, and so we had all these people, and they put together a band, and then for our staff Christmas party, they played a set of about 7 or 8 songs. It was one of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life, and it was just like it was just incredible. Like you never really realize, everybody has sort of hidden talents and hidden things they're good at, and we happened to, somebody had the idea at Pinnacle to, hey, let's start a band for the Christmas party, and they rehearsed every week, and every now and then you'd hear buzz around the building like, you should stay late and listen to these guys, like they're really good. And they were amazing, and it was it was very much what you'd expect in Texas. It was a lot of Austin, and just a great day. That was probably the best moment I ever had at Pinnacle, was just that Christmas party and how much fun that was, and things went south pretty quick after that. Basura, yes. That's the Spanish word for trash, and anytime we were throwing anything out in the building, and we had this Mexican group of cleaners that came in, and if we wanted anything to be taken away, we had to write Basura on it. So you were always walking around with all these things with Basura written on it, leaning up against the wall, and that's so when they wanted to have a name for the band, I mean, Basura was like the perfect option. Basura should have a Wikipedia page. Like, if anything from Pinnacle should have its own Wikipedia page, it should be Basura.
Just proving the stories that we tell in this hobby, they stick in the old noggin.
There you
and
go.
I know that. I'm like, I remember him telling this, and the band's named after Spanish for garbage, and I'm like, Basura. Then I was like, Google Basura. That's it.
Basura, yeah.
I told my dad tonight, I said, Jeff Morris is going to be on the show. He's like, that's the dude from Pinnacle, right? And I'm like, yep. And he goes, you guys should have fun. So it's good after the show. Like tomorrow night, I'll talk to him. And they're like, what'd you guys talk about? I said, Dad, it's on YouTube. You can go watch. And he goes, but I like to hear from you.
They got this whack job from Canada that tells the same stories over and over again.
The stories are worth their weight in gold.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell them 50 times, Jeff, and we'd never get sick of them.
It's because every time there's a little detail, like the drummer was in the Pointer Sisters band. I remember the one lady was a backup singer, but I didn't know for Stevie Ray Vaughan. I love Stevie Ray Vaughan. So it's just like, how can your co-workers have such a historic past and now they're making baseball cards? It's like you said, it takes all walks of life to come into this hobby, because today too many people are worried about value over the story behind the card. And
that's the great thing about the like when I mean, I'm the luckiest guy ever to having been fortunate to work in this business. I mean, I would give anything to be back in the business working. I mean, I just, things didn't work out that I could stay in the United States when the hobby crashed, and when Pacific stopped operating, there was nobody hiring. I had to go back to Canada, and then the hobby kind of downsized, and then it started up again, and it kind of left me behind, and I would love to be back in it. But at the same time, I mean, I grew up a collector. I grew up a hardcore collector. I got into where I was through being a journalist and ending up in the hobby media, and then being kind of headhunted by card companies, and that was that was what I always wanted to do. It was a dream job for me. It was I mean, it was the best job in the world, and to work in that industry. I'm so fortunate because I was always looking at it as like, I'm a hardcore collector. What would I like in a product? So that's what made it so that's what made it so good. I mean, I loved every second of working there. But then when I look back, the people and the moments and the energy, and the thing that was so magical about the 90s and is the thing that was just so magical about it was that you know, there was us, there was Fleer, there was Upper Deck, there was Tops. Tops was a little bit different. You know, they were in New York, and they were kind of a little more corporate than we were, but we were all friends. We all hung out together, like all the, you know, you know, I still talk to Rich Bradley and Tim Franz and the guys that were at Fleer. I still talk to a lot of you know, I'm still connected with a lot of people as friends, and we'd go to shows and we'd all end up at the same bar and having a great time. You know, there was friendly competition, but we were all friends. And I mean, we all ended up working for multiple companies. So we worked against each other and with each other and beside each other. And you know, it was one of those crazy, it's like being an athlete now. There's so much movement that every team you get traded to, you're going to end up with 3 or 4 guys you've played with in the past. I mean, that's just sort of the nature of it. But the thing is that the competitiveness and what was so competitive about our business then is it forced us to generate these ideas and these crazy ideas and these like we had to stand out somehow. And I keep looking at and you know, I'm still a collector, so I look at it and it's like man, every product is designed the same. There's so few, you know, like the most brilliant the most brilliant thing ever invented in the hobby was when Upper Deck came up with the jersey card in the mid 90s. I mean that, but we really haven't had, you know, we've had some other things. I mean, some of the things I was responsible for, I was kind of the outside the box guy in that era. Like we did things like at Pacific, like having a bobblehead, making our own bobbleheads and putting them in boxes. And we, you know, I was the guy that had the first graded card in a pack. We did that with Edge Graded at Collector's Edge, and that was a huge success. You know, you had to kind of mix and match what works in the hobby. The reason that the Game Used jersey worked is because people were really after Game Used jersey cards. We had to look at, okay, what are the other things that collectors want, and we've got to sort of give that to them. Combined with cards, we had all kinds of different things and ideas. And at Pinnacle, we kind of went off the rails a little bit because it got kind of crazy with our packaging. This is the 25th anniversary of Inside, the cards that came in cans, which was a great idea until you're a hobby shop owner with 12 boxes coming in, and where the hell are you going to stack those? Exactly, yeah, so yeah, there was a lot of trial and error in that time, but it brought out the best in everybody, using different foils, different etching techniques, different ideas, different sales programs, different like at every level now, because too many of the sports have you know, have exclusives. We just have, you know, we're seeing a lot of the, you know, Brian Foy that I worked with. I wish he'd have Brian on sometime, because he's one of the world's largest Dallas Cowboys collectors. He's a veterinarian now. I worked alongside him at Pinnacle, and I kind of was beside him when he developed the card in the Dare to Tear card in the Card Zenith program. And you know, we're having lunch, and it was really funny because Brian was terrified. People have phobias. He was phobic to Luby's cafeteria because there was at one point there was a shooting in the news at Luby's, and so one time we used to love to go to Luby's. It's like, let's go to Luby's, and he was like shaking making sure that he was facing the door so that he could see if a gunman came in, and like he was paranoid. And of course we just like fed off that and just like
I remember that.
well,
I remember that.
we made life worse for him. And it was like Brian and I always went, he loved Arby's. And the only reason he loved Arby's was because he was the biggest Seinfeld fan in the world, and Putty always went to Arby's. So it's like, let's go to Arby's, you know, like we were very influenced by different pop culture things. But I mean, we'd go to Arby's and he'd have to sit there facing the door in case a gunman came in. Like he was paranoid, but we used to tease the hell out of him for it. But Brian and I would go to lunch, and he'd have to stop at the pet store, buy fish, little fish, and then we had to go to his apartment because he had a tank with piranhas in it, and he had to dump the fish in with the piranhas, and we had to watch the piranhas eat the fish. And he's like, "Isn't that cool?" And I'm like, "You're sick." And now he's a veterinarian, obviously. You know, like, it's funny, but we went out for lunch, and he said, I want to run this idea by you I've got. And so he said, I don't know how we're going to do it. We'll have to talk to them. But he said, I wanted to make like a big card. And he kind of got the idea of a big card because we had just resurrected Beehive hockey. We did it in a 5x7 format. Like if we tried to make a retro brand like the old Beehive photos. And Brian wanted to have a card that size that was hollowed out with a regular card in it, and then have it would be dare to tear. Do you want to wreck your big card to find the prize inside, or do you want to? So that became the big thing, and I was like I love that. I mean, it's cruel. It's the cruelest, most twisted thing I've ever heard, that you could do that to a collector. But I mean, what a brilliant idea. And so that was the beginning. But Brian was like to come up with a concept and an idea like that. You know, those kind of ideas, I think, I don't know whether we've just exhausted them all, or you know what's next. I mean, I don't know. We've kind of come up with every technology possible, every jersey autograph combination, numbered to this, die cut to that, foil variation, serial numbering. I love the Tops Now program. I love the Upper Deck Game Day program. I think those are brilliant ideas, but they're not new cards. They're just different ways of they're different levels of relevance. And I think that those programs bring hockey fans, baseball fans, whatever, back into the realm. But like I've got, for example, I think I've got it on my desk here somewhere. I got the Tops Now card graded of. Let me reach over here and try not to knock everything over. I got some cards graded at the Expo last year. Yeah, here it is. Aaron Judge's first home run. Tops graded, a Beckett. It's probably shiny there. I'll try to get a good look at it. I thought this card was like perfect when I sent it in, and it came back 3.5. So shows you how perfect, how tight the grading is. And
what they dock you on, Jeff? That's pretty bad.
Yeah, I didn't really look at it other than like it looked good to me, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not one of those guys that sits there with,
jeweler's loop.
Exactly. Like it's too funny. This one is Cole Caulfield's The Young Guns rookie, came back 8.5. That one's not too bad. That should take it out of the thing. But I'm really trying to. Yeah, there it is. There's it's just, I mean, it's kind of a crapshoot with grading sometimes because the micro details that they're looking at. I mean, I don't look for them that much. This one, I was surprised. This came back at 9. Okay, this is Pacific. This is the first Jason Spezza rookie card that we did, and it's the gold variation. And I thought when I sent this in, this has a lot of foil chipping along the edges, but it came back a 9. And then it's like, well, how is that a 9? And how is the Aaron Judge card a 3.5? I don't know. I don't get it. It's like buying a lottery ticket to me. This my Kippersoft, or no, that's Trevor Zegras. This one came back 9.5. So I think for Beckett, 9.5 is about. I don't think Beckett 10s are attainable. This one was. I don't think anything I'd ever sent in would be this one. I've shown you this one before. This is the Gretzky Emerald Moment. That one came back 8.5. This one is the one where this was the one from our Epics cross-brand promotion that was in Zenith, and there were only 9 of them went into packs. And
beautiful card.
Yeah, beautiful card, and when you think of there were a few customer service copies that got out, a handful of them. This is one of those. So, but counting this one, there's probably only about 15 to 20 that exist. And I mean, that's my like holy grail of anything I've ever done that I'll have forever and ever. Till they expire, and then my kids can save that and do whatever they want with it. But
so a couple things real quick, Jeff. So Dave's phone died. He will be back. He's letting it charge for a bit.
Okay.
Also wanted to focus on the time. I know normally we got you for 2 hours. We're coming up on we're just over the 1 hour, 50-minute mark.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Wanted to see if you wanted to cover anything else from the list of topics real quick to close off your portion, and then we'll let you kind of ride off into the sunset for the evening. I
don't remember what's on the list.
Let's see. We've got the 50th anniversary of WHA, the upcoming Expo, World Series preview if you wanted to go there, or the Hockey Canada scandal and its hobby impact.
Let's talk about the Hockey Canada scandal for a bit, because that's something that's a huge news story up here, and I don't know if the tentacles of this story have reached down there very much. And where like basically what happened, Hockey Canada is the hobby kind of comparison is Bowman. Upper Deck produced junior cards for Hockey Canada of their players, and they're considered the XRCs, the pre-rookie cards. They're where they can the young stars before they're in the NHL. That's where they can get cards. Now after the 2018 World Juniors, there was a gala, and allegedly the story is that 6 players assaulted a woman in a hotel room at this party. The 6 players haven't been named. Apparently some or all are NHL players or players who have been in the NHL. Hockey Canada gave the woman apparently hush-up money to keep this quiet, and a reporter from TSN in Canada found out about it, and the whole thing was cracked open. And what the problem is that Hockey Canada has this fund, or had this fund, that they would pay off victims of sexual assault with this fund, and some of the money came from minor hockey player registrations. Every kid playing hockey in Canada, $3 of his registration went to Hockey Canada to oversee hockey in Canada as an umbrella organization. So as a result, all of the major corporations, or most of the major corporations, pulled their sponsorship from Hockey Canada. It's jeopardizing the World Junior Tournament this year, because a lot of the sponsors have pulled out of that. The Canadian National Program, the entire board of directors, and the president and the CEO, like everybody, have had to resign over this. It's a huge scandal. Where it impacts the hobby, one is Upper Deck has a Hockey Canada license. Upper Deck has still got that license, but the problem is that there are no retailers in Canada that really want to touch anything to do with Hockey Canada right now. So Upper Deck doesn't really have the ability to produce a product and get mainstream distribution in Canada. None of the players that are junior players now have anything to do with this, but it's just the brand and the logo are just unwanted right now. Also, last year, Tim Hortons had a second hockey card series where they did a Hockey Canada set featuring the World Junior players from the women's national team, ex Hockey Canada players that were NHL stars, like the guys like Gretzky, Marcel Dion, Guy Lafleur, all those guys. So that there will be no Hockey Canada Tim Hortons set. So that again, that has ripple effects in the hobby. But the big question is what is Upper Deck going to do with this license? Because they want, and it's an important license in the hobby, because if you were a year or two ago and you wanted a Shane Wright card, or you wanted some of these guys that are just breaking into the NHL now. Well, their first cards, their first memorabilia cards, their first autograph cards were in all these Hockey Canada sets. But with Hockey Canada literally imploding as an entity, nobody knows where this is going to end up and where the chips are going to fall. It's a very unfortunate situation that has happened. But the thing is that as the more digging people have done, the more cover-ups of these type of scandals that people have found out about. So it does have a lot of ripple effects in the hobby. I don't think it'll hurt hockey as a whole at the grassroots level. It'll just kind of localize things a little more and take maybe a national umbrella organization, give them less power. But it really is a scandal that really rocked the country as far as, hockey, minor hockey and youth hockey is sacred to us up here. And for, it's Little League Baseball plus Pop Warner for you guys would be our hockey program. And for a scandal like this to not only have happened, but then for it to come out that these cover-ups have been happening with this Hockey Canada hush money for years is just unacceptable at every level. And the backlash is going to affect so many different so many different things to do with hockey, and the hobby is one of them.
I know we had the discussion before, probably 2 years ago, on the equivalency of, like you said, first Bowman cards. Will the Team Canada Junior sets, when the hobby was spiking, will they become hockey's version of the Bowman first cards, the true quote-unquote rookie? It's not in a professional uniform, unlike Bowman, but we were thinking, will the popularity of those cards go up now that someone can see an equivalency? And we didn't get into the whole scandal thing because that just recently happened, but we had that discussion. It's just funny how that product, it's not very expensive. After the fact now, I've seen boxes go up. So, depending on who's in there, I think McDavid has some cards in 1 year. Lafreniere, those boxes went up after time. But it's just interesting now that it's just going to come to a full stop.
And that's what's interesting about it. I mean, collectors still want it. The player selection is fantastic in these sets. You're gonna find these guys that are the superstars. The problem is that the the wholesale chains and the retailers, the Walmarts of the world, all the people that Canadian Tire was the first big company to pull out of the Hockey Canada sponsorship. Well, Canadian Tire moved a crap load of these Hockey Canada cards, and that's the problem. It's like the people want the cards, they want the players, but with losing this retail distribution, how do you get them into their hands unless they produce the set and sell direct? But then again, what kind of a PR hit optically is Upper Deck going to hit by even having anything to do with Hockey Canada? It's such a negative brand right now. Does Upper Deck want to even touch it with a 10-foot pole? And I don't think they would. I think they're smart enough to know that you just got to let this one breathe for a bit, and then let Hockey Canada restructure itself, and then pick it up again. You know, it's because this is an ugly thing going on up here.
Yeah, crazy.
As being someone who drove an hour and a half to go to Canadian Tire to buy hockey cards, that you could only get a Canadian Tire, I understand these things. My wife said, "Why do you want to go to a Canadian Tire store?" I'm like, "I have reasons. And then I come walking out smiling, and this guy looks at me. He's like, he goes, "You American?" I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm buying hockey cards." He gave me the oddest look, like, what? And it was just fantastic. But
it's the same look I get when I drive to Watertown, just to go Watertown, New York, just so I can go to Sonic, because we don't have Sonic. And I'll see these amazing commercials, and it's like, I got to go to Sonic. That looks so cool. And yeah, it's always what you can't have, you know, that is what you want to get. So
it was that and Toys R Us, because my daughter won a soccer tournament. And we said, we'll go to Toys R Us, and there are no Toys R Us left in the States. So we went to Canada to go to Toys R Us.
Toys R Us left in the States? Do I have time for a Toys R Us story? I know.
Absolutely.
I know I'm at my end. So.
We're on your schedule, Jeff.
Yeah.
I just know we typically have you for 2 hours, so go for it.
This is one of the most bizarre things ever. But when I got to work in the industry, I was so excited about being part of the hobby. I didn't realize how sleazy some of the people that worked in the business were. And I mean, it was like working. It was like being thrown in the middle of a Simpsons episode. Like it really was at some point. And we had a meeting with the distributor for the national distributor for Toys R Us, and in the hobby. And this guy wanted to have the meeting in a strip club. And it's like, we're selling baseball cards. And it's like, and this guy was oh yeah, did he take you to a strip club? It was like, and it just like, you know, I had kids, and Toys R Us had Toys R Us was like a sacred place to us, because that was like, you know, when you're a parent, I mean, everything's there, and there's the little area where the video games and the cards are, and back then, and the guy that was the buyer for Toys R Us, I don't know if he was the only, I don't know if he was the only buyer or whatever, but we had to have this meeting, and it's like the guy always wanted to meet in a strip club, and I had never been in a strip club in my life, and I did not want to go. I was so disgusted with this whole, I was so disgusted with the whole idea of that this guy would be so dirty and sleazy to want to have a business meeting in a place like that. And then I've kind of ever since then, I kind of cheered against Toys R Us in the States whenever. So the fact that they're not even around anymore, it's like, well, good riddance if that's the kind of people that were representing your company. And Toys R Us probably didn't even know that this was going on. But that's the one thing that always stuck in my mind about trading cards at Toys R Us, was that their buyer always wanted to have his meetings at strip clubs. I mean, it's like a Sopranos episode when you go into the Bada Boom or whatever it is. It's like the same kind of thing. So,
well, they tried to make a comeback here in the States, and that fell short. And I think the last kind of thing that I kind of heard was they were going to be coming back in basically like into Macy's. So it wasn't going to be like a full-blown Toys R Us independent store, but they were just going to have a Toys R Us type dynamic inside of it.
Yeah, that would probably work. Or they could change their name to Toys Were Them or something instead of Toys R Us. But yeah, I don't know if you guys had ever heard that about Toys R Us back in the hobby days.
Wouldn't surprise me though.
Like there were some real characters that when I worked at Shop at Home, we came across some, as we call them, the black hats of the world. There were white hats and black hats, and it just seemed that everybody we dealt with at Shop at Home seemed to be a black hat. But when you're working in that world, you kind of got to embrace it.
Hey, I've worked in telecommunications for over 20 years, so there's some interesting characters in this business too. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So with that,
I just darkened the whole show on you. I'm sorry to.
Never. No. You'd be surprised, Jeff, if you've ever had an opportunity to go back and watch past episodes. You're good, I promise.
You need a full Syracuse football episode going on. That's what you gotta, or an Expos episode. Gotta represent. So. But anyway, I guess that's the only thing we didn't cover was the WHA, and the 50th anniversary of the WHA was last month, and we talked about O-Pee-Chee 72-73 hockey having. We talked about 72-73 O-Pee-Chee hockey having the insert sets from Team Canada, but they also did a third series that year, which was all WHA. And one of my favorite sets. And it's weird to see, like, as much as the WHA and NHL hated each other, it was weird to see that was actually allowed to happen. That in the licenses, like, I couldn't imagine that now. What ended up happening after that first year is O-Pee-Chee put out a separate WHA series for a few years that was on its own, but it was very difficult to find. I lived again in a rural area where our convenience store where I bought all my cards, they didn't even carry it. I mean, maybe in the cities they carried it. But the WHA, there were a lot of attempts to have 50th anniversary sort of shows and reunions. A lot of them didn't get off the ground. I know Vancouver was planning something. Winnipeg was planning something. With the WHA, the really interesting tie-in was that once they got this Canada-Soviet series off the ground, the players that had jumped to the WHA were excluded from it. So to this day, like Pete Mahovlich and Frank Mahovlich, they were talking about this at the Expo in the spring when they were autograph guests. They still will not call Team Canada Team Canada. They call it NHL All-Stars, and the reason is because Bobby Hull was not included in that. Bobby Hull jumped to the NHL from the NHL to the WHA, signed $1 million contract, and he was excluded. Derek Sanderson was another player from the Bruins. Sanderson was excluded from the Canada Soviet series because he had jumped to the Philadelphia Blazers in the WHA. So there were a lot of guys that left, and they were off the list for Team Canada. Jerry Cheevers was one of them. He left the Bruins to go to the Cleveland Crusaders. So you had a lot of guys being replaced at the last minute, but it really upset some of the players that the guys that they wanted to play with were all of a sudden not there because of some deal Alan Eagleson had made with the NHL and with the Soviets. But I mean that series, that set is to me it's iconic because it's a little bit harder to find. It's not expensive. The Bobby Hull WHA card, his first WHA card with the Winnipeg Jets, is a great card to have, and as one thing I'm focusing on as a collector, I'm trying to piece in all my 1970s stuff and going after some of the WHA stuff. And this is pre-Gretzky WHA. I think that's something that's really a fun thing to go after. And when you see how the WHA changed hockey and revolutionized hockey, and all of a sudden made it so that NHL players were going to get legitimately decent salaries. Some of these guys through the 60s were playing for like $15,000, $20,000 a year, and not making any more money than the guy working at the factory. And the WHA came in and offered everybody triple the salary, and it just changed the dynamic. It made the NHL it made them made them realize that, okay, we were going to have to start paying the players now. So it really did. The blue pucks didn't last, but some of the other things that they did were good. And I don't know. If you grew up in a market that had WHA hockey, I mean, it was pretty exciting. And then of course the leagues merged, which I think was what everyone wanted at some point. Anyway, that gave the NHL Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, and Gordie Howe again, and Bobby Hull again, and quite a few other young stars. The Quebec Nordiques and the Nordiques Montreal Canadiens rivalry was incredible. The Whalers and Bruins rivalry was incredible. Like it was a great thing for hockey, but a real gold mine for collectors.
You're on mute, Dave. Or did we lose him again? I think we lost him. Dave. Earth to Dave. Say something, Dave. Say something.
Speak, Ubu. Oh, that's sit, Ubu said. Sorry. In this case, speak, Dave, speak.
We see you. Speaking of technical difficulties. Just say something, Dave.
Uh-oh, he's gone. Spaceball 1's gone plaid.
Now say something.
Mm-mm.
Can't hear you. Well, while Dave figures this out, since we are past the 2-hour mark, Jeff, we do want to thank you as always for joining us. We always look forward to you coming and hanging out. You always fill us with phenomenal stories that normally you don't get from anywhere else. So it always is a pleasure to have you, and we always look forward to you coming on and sharing those stories and just your vast experience within the hobby. And we really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, and sorry if I'm rehashing the same stuff every time I come on with you guys. But
no,
it's
don't apologize.
I heard something.
Could you?
Yes, I did. There we go.
There you go.
Welcome back, Fearless Leader.
God.
So I was just thanking Jeff for coming on. I don't know if you have any other additional closing marks for Jeff that you want to share.
No, thank you for your time. Again, we've said it every time for us to be able just to bask in the history you've had in cards, the history you've had with sports. It's a fucking pleasure. I mean, it's something, we've said it. I'll continue to say it every time. I'm a broken fucking record. If you would have asked me 20 years ago, you can talk to somebody that was very integral and part in the pieces of cardboard you collect, and you could talk to them several times and they'd actually be like willing to come back on a podcast you're doing. I'd be like, you're fucking drunk, high, you're a mess. No, that doesn't exist. That's not what we call real life. That's fantasy land. So yeah, this is one of the most fun episodes we've all had every time you've been on, because we can just sit there and listen, and everybody else can listen too, because when they listen to us, most of the time it's just nonsensical drivel well, I'll speak for myself. It's nonsensical drivel, and people just are like throwing their computer or their phone or whatever they're watching the show on out the window or stomping on it just so they can mute my voice permanently. But yeah, like we've said, anytime you want to come on, if you can reach out to us, say, hey, I'd like to come on the show and I got this to talk about. That door is always open because listening to you and just taking in all your knowledge, the wealth of experience you've had, not just in cards but in life, it's an absolute pleasure. And I speak for all of us, and I want to say thank you again. Sincerest thanks.
Well, thanks very much. That's really kind of you to say that, and you know, I genuinely mean it when I say that I was so fortunate and blessed to be lucky enough to work in this industry and to be the guy that got to put some of these things together. And you know, I remember being a 6 or 7 year old kid looking at my cards and looking at the back of them, and oh, I wonder what OPG is, or I wonder what Tops is. I'd like to work there someday. Boy, wouldn't that be good? I want to play in the NFL and or CFL, and then maybe work for Tops. I mean, that was my dream. And you know, I only lasted in the CFL for like 4 weeks before I got run out of town. But being working for a card company was just the be all and end all, and it was as a collector, as a lifelong collector, it was really special. And if I can just say one thing before I go, you see all the stuff on the NFL sidelines this month. Intercept cancer. You see something like Boston tonight had Hockey Fights Cancer Night. I talked about it on the show before. I have bone marrow cancer. It's incurable. It's manageable, and I will die with this, not from this, if everything goes well. But you know, we put the people that we talk about on a pedestal, and we misuse the word heroes. You know, Wayne Gretzky's not a hero. Michael Jordan's not a hero. Fernando Tatis is not a hero, and Mike Trout is not a hero. They're just guys that are really good at sports. And if you ever out there decided someday you want to be a hero, all you have to do is go down to the blood center, clinic, wherever it is, go to the hospital, donate blood, donate plasma, donate bone marrow. You will save somebody's life. I was kept alive during my stem cell transplant. I was kept alive for 2 weeks by people who I will never meet, who donated blood and bone marrow, and I lived off of their red blood cells and platelets while my body recovered from the stem cell transplant. I was able to produce my own, and these are heroes that are probably just, might be your mailman, it might be the guy that sells cars, it might be the guy that's an Uber driver, it might be a guy that works at the Amazon fulfillment center, who knows. But that is how you can be a hero. And if you ever decided, you always watch these people on TV, like on shows like 911 and things like that, or you watch The Rookie, or any of those shows that are on TV, and emergency responders and police and firefighters, they're portrayed as heroes, and they are heroes. But that doesn't mean that you can't be a hero. And if you want to save someone's life, if you get up tomorrow morning and you say, today I'm going to save someone's life, I'm going to be a hero, go down and donate blood, donate plasma, donate bone marrow. You will save someone's life, and it means everything to people like me that have relied on it. So I'll leave you with those words of wisdom, and God bless everybody, especially those of you that are fighting.
Great message, Jeff. Thank you.
All right, boys, I can't wait to do this again with you guys.
Always look forward to it.
Yes, we will be in touch, as they say.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. I'm going to be here until I figure out the button on how to leave the.
It's all right. I'm going to drop you down. I love these shows, guys, and I know he can still hear us because I still see him. But I love having him on. If we could have him on every week, I'd have him on every week.
He's got to come back and show us some collection stuff. Like, we got to pre-plan it and say, here, go digging get some obscure stuff like that Gretzky, you know.
Yeah.
If someone would listen to think about the rarity of that card,
Oh yeah.
oh, I have a Mac Jones numbered 101. This is Wayne Gretzky. They made 7 of them.
Yep. So Jeff, if you still hear me, just click out of your browser. That's the easiest way to leave.
Shut off the computer so you can stop hearing listening to babble.
That's
he
true.
dropped. I just didn't want it to sit there and go, okay, how the, that's why I was like, the easiest thing to do is just click out of your browser. But, his also his ending message, I do agree. It's one of those in which it's the small things that a lot of people don't realize that anybody can do that actually does make a difference. And that is definitely one of them.
Save all that with Shelby. So
I haven't given blood in quite a few years, but I used to do it regularly. So it's one of those in which I stand behind that message though too. But so Dave, I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to touch on, or if we wanted to kind of call this one a wrap.
We will call it a wrap, and then next week we'll start with a little more. Don't want to be selfish, but like, hey, what do we do? What do we got? A little more us time. Which again, it doesn't matter either way, but the usual format. Like I said, I'm glad Jeff sort of laid out what he wanted to talk about, and again, for us, that either way, it's a roller coaster either way, and with a little more, I would say, scripted with the format, just having some reduction in that. It's nice too. So, yeah, can't wait for him to get back on.
I know that was driving you nuts.
no, I wasn't
Sorry.
It didn't even bother me. I was like,
Well, anytime we have Jeff deserves to be up there next to Dave. So
yeah.
it's one of those in which I'm glad to kind of move down to the lower rung.
Well, there's only one lowest rung, so you'll never be there.
Well, but that's also, that's self-given though by said individual.
I know. And I also I'm glad Vinny tonight got some more chatter in. Because I know other times that's always at the forefront, because I think the first episode Jeff was on, Vinny was pretty much a mute in the corner. So
so was I pretty much, because you had the bulk of the questions.
But too, that you've said this before, where it's like, this is the episode I'm the wallflower.
Yes.
If I see something or if I hear something, I'm like, oh. Sort of cast your line, then reel it back in, and just sort of sit. Just waiting for your shot. So, but with Vinny, when he started talking Detroit, I'm like, oh, okay, you're driving down Vinny's street, so let me try to get him into it. And so, yeah, it's not tough, but you want to find those openings. You don't want to sit there and just like.
No, agreed. And thanks, Eric. Yeah, we love having him on. It just he does the bulk of the talking, which makes things so much easier for us.
Very much so.
But at the same time, hopefully we won't have any technical difficulties next time we bring him back on. But hey, I at least took it over. We were good. I told you, don't worry about it. I made sure I brought up the timing because we were getting close, and we want to be respectful of his time, especially being on the East Coast, like we always talk about. It's one of the focal points that we always want to make sure that we bring to the forefront. And, he went a little bit longer, in which he normally does, but
we also want to remind him there's really no time limit. So,
well, and that's the thing. We're not set on a time.
Yeah.
But normally he's comfortable at the 2-hour mark. That's typically what he prefers to, and that was the precedent that he set early. So we kind of stay with that. And I know Dave talks to him from time to time, and I'm sure he's probably told him, hey, we don't have specific times. We go on and when you're ready to go, but at the same time, we want to focus on your availability. If it's all about him. We could go 4 and 5 hours. We've done it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, for something that he's made mention before, roughly only being able to go about 2 hours, that's what he feels comfortable with. We try and make sure that we stay true to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't want to alienate the people, your guests, your friends. They're trying to be greedy with their time when they've already. And again, it's not like you said, I only have 2 hours. That's my limit. So it's about what I can give you. And again, when he goes longer, that's a benefit. It's a plus. I mean, we get to hear him tell stories, tell tales.
Yep.
It's a
But
win-win.
it's on his schedule.
Yeah. You want to make sure he's dealing with the treatments, he's dealing with the cancer. You could have a bad time, you could have something going on, and you just feel whatever. You're just not feeling it, and like, hey man, we wrap it up early. It wouldn't matter. It just wouldn't matter. It's whatever time he gives, I will gladly take.
Absolutely.
He could say I'm on for an hour, and I've got an hour, and that's it. Hey, that's fine.
And I think everybody here would respect that and appreciate that as well. So like I always say, I love these episodes. Even and like Vinny mentioned, yeah, we've heard some of these stories, but when he retells them from time to time, we get additional tidbits. And that's kind of the cool little aspect of it, because maybe he didn't remember that tidbit, last time he told the story. And we get a little bit more, or we get a little bit more context. And, what more could you ask for? So,
did him secretly bring on a friend next time?
it would be cool if we could find a way to kind of give him a gentle nudge and see if he couldn't get Kramer on with him.
Or Don West. Woo, boy.
I've had those wheels absolutely churning.
I would rather have Kramer. I would rather have Mike Kramer on over Don West. Just from my, just from my perspective, because, Pacific, we've talked about this. Would it be cool as hell to have Don West on? Absolutely. And that would be just one of those things that I think we'd all just like crap our pants or have a hobby boner, as what Jeff said earlier. But, to me, that's shooting for the stars. Like, since we know Jeff and Mike are still close, that to me has a little bit more of substance as a possibility. Just throwing that out there. Dave, you were saying something.
I'm gonna go back, and I hate listening, but it's him talking, so I can listen. Try to, and again, it's not like I'm gonna say, hey, how do you spell this person's name? Just try to do it phonetically, and hopefully Google will find something, or because on Facebook, I think I'm friends with both Carvin and Cilio, so maybe I go through their friend list, and somehow these people show up. So, and just be like, hey, here's like your Christmas, here's like a happy birthday gift, and have like get him on there so he can't see like who's waiting. He can maybe see like the guests thing pop up, but it's like he won't know. And then there's a couple of these people he's talked about, like the drummer from the Pointer Sisters, a backup for Stevie Ray Vaughan, and have these people come on, and he's just like, holy shit, I haven't talked to you in 20, 25 years. And just be like, now you get, when we say the community, you get when we say connections, relationships. These are the things we mean. It's not just pushing it in a card direction. It's cards are on the bottom of the pile. It's everything else is lumped on top. Cards is how you came together, but again, cards are like the seed. The relationships are the dirt, the waters, the relationship, the sunlight of being around these people, interacting with these people, seeing them, and like, holy Christ, you guys are a band. You guys are fucking awesome. And you,
Right.
you do graphic design, you do whatever. It's like you put them in a lineup, like, these people play music, and then all of a sudden it's like, these people play music. So to have, I've thought about that probably more than I should.
Not in your brain, Dave.
Oh fuck! Those dominoes sit there, and it's just like, God, if I just. So now tonight again, taking down the names, I'll do that because I made sure a couple times to check out like the timestamp, so I could go back and like zoom forward to that. So yeah, that's something I really want to do. A couple other ideas I do have, and again, I'm gonna have to go digging further for information and finding specific people too, just to, if these people are out there in some sort of social media platform, or they have information available to unearth, to try to extend that olive branch and be like, hey, do this. And again, just you have nothing to do but show up and just tell stories. That's literally all we want. So, and again, maybe somebody will say something that jostles somebody else's mind. They say something else comes back to somebody else that everybody else forgot, and it's like, that's what you want, because then it's like, okay, now you see those guys and gals living in the present of 25 years ago, instead of, oh, I remember that, and just sort of, no, it's like they remember the good times, all that, the good feels, as the kids say, they're coming back.
And it'd be nice to have collectors in the card manufacturers these days. Like Billy, at least Billy's a collector, and he can insert that into Upper Deck. And I know Upper Deck's got the monopoly on hockey cards, but you know what? They at least try to put some stuff into the product that changes things.
Mm-hmm.
They retro stuff, like Time Capsule. That was your Dare to Tear out of Chronology.
Mm-hmm.
You had your little mini card inside, and it was like, okay, there's a blast from the past. That's pretty cool. Like I said, I'm really kind of excited about this. What was it called? I wrote it down. Population count that's coming out, and center of attention. Center of attention is going to be 1 in 16, and population count, like I said, is going to be numbered 101 to out of 1,000 with foil board. And if you give us something old, you give us something new, you don't just regurgitate the same stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps us, yeah.
Is that regurgitation?
At least my version of it. It gives us something to look forward to instead of opening like same old junk. It's like Tops. You rip Tops and you're like, same old stuff. It's like, at least when we were opening basketball, it was like, okay, this is something different. Then when you open the second basketball, you're like, yeah, this is as dull as the first one. It's just like, man, you're like, what I got here? And then you have the polar opposite where you're opening National Treasures for $8 kajillion, and you're trying to justify spending that money and saying, well, this card's worth, let's divide it by this. This is the best card, so we got to take that's 38.2% of the box, so that's what it's worth. It's not how it works. It's not how any of this works.
Sure it is.
No, it's not.
Sure it is. Come on. That's what it's all about these days.
If I could get back in the day, if I could get the set out of the box, I was happy. And if I got a couple cool inserts, it's like, dang. I agree, Ghost. I know it's just complete, utter chaos. Just.
Ay. All right, Dave. Wrap us up.
So, thank you again for Jeff for joining us, taking whatever 2 hours 20 minutes, 2 hours 15 minutes out of his evening, regaling us with tales, anecdotes, stories.
Hashtag invest.
Yeah.
Advice.
Yes, if you didn't listen to the players to watch hobby wise, you are foolhardy. And I didn't even bring up the Robertson brothers, so I held back as much as I could. But I know I got a good episode. It just that's you just always hope for good chatter, and that's what we got again. And super happy to have him. Always, as long as I say, hey, when would you want to come on, or when can you come on? And I'm going to be gone this week. Next week work. Fine, 100% fine. So I think the only even the only episode I think would be like before Christmas. That'd be a tough one to get him on for stories and stuff of that nature. But
yeah. We have to wait until next year. It's one of those in which it's always a pleasure to have him. So even if it's 6 months from now, I don't want us to wait that long, of course.
No.
But
no, I think that break up too. If and we've said it, we want him on every week, but we don't want, just because we've got some odd personality traits, especially me, just to, it's not alienate, it's just get him to the point where he gets burnt out of us. So that's why I try to, it's every 2 months, month and a half, somewhere in there, a couple months, and that usually seems to be a nice sweet spot. So get him on like 4 times a year. That's I think for him, if you wanted to come on more, like we said, all he has to do is ask. He said, hey, got something, let's go. Shootout in Rangers, Colorado. Oof. But yeah, good episode. Not sure next week. I reached out some more olive branches and waiting to hear back from some folks. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Plenty to talk about, though. I mean, it's, like I said, sports season it's here. McKinnon and Capo Caco both denied. So again, thank you, Jeff. Technical difficulties, fuck them. I hate technology. Hate. You plug in your phone and the fucker dies as it shows it's charging. So thankfully I had a new cord in the car, so was able to run out and get that. And only be away for a handful of minutes.
Hey, that's what a co-host is for, though, is to pick up the slack in the event that it ran without any issues.
I was prepared to give the outro if necessary.
84 people started watching then as I was off.
No. No.
McCarr and Zibanejad both stonewalled.
It's actually interesting that we get normally less live viewers when he's on, but it's one of the shows in the archives that actually gets quite a few viewers, which I find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways,
Renton and score. But yeah, thank you, Jeff. Next week, back to the 7:35 starting time. That's all I got. Send donations. We need monies. No
donate
crypto.
blood,
Yeah,
plasma,
donate.
bone marrow.
Yeah. Thank a veteran.
Thank you, Ghost. For second that emotion.
Tied at one. But yes, do all those. And Sevens used to always say, do something good, or what was it,
I
Steve?
just
Do
stabbed
something
myself
good.
on the.
Say something good or do something good for somebody. Something
Yeah.
along those lines.
So try to. I know in these tumultuous times of fun, that can be difficult, but if you can help somebody, just one person, that you don't know how much that can affect them. So with that, Evan Rodriguez scored, former Pittsburgh Penguin there, Vinny. 2-1. With that,
Thank you, Howard Cosell.
Evan Rodriguez, a backhander, and Mikael Gergen, when he put him in the net. Oh, the humanity. I don't know if that's an Adam Giaiello impersonation or a terrible Howard Cosell. You be the judge. And that's it. They win. Colorado. With that, that's Vinny. That's Steve. I'm Dave. Remember, collecting cards, wonderful hobby. The friendships you forge along the way, as evidence tonight, it's what really matters. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.